Come and sit down in the shade so I can do another Hanson record. Another Hanson record, Pauline. So I was arrested by these New South Wales policy enforcers, these Nazis, right? And I was thrown out the back door of the police station. And I was given this ticket to appear. I thought it was rather bizarre that I was dragged away from town by half an hour. And I had to hitch home. I had to hitch all the way back to the car, Pauline, after I was thrown out the back door of the police station. I find it rather bizarre. So I end up in court, Pauline, and I end up recording and playing this little game to show the people of Australia how they've lost control of their very own country to this machine, this mob of criminal gangsters and basically slave traders, Pauline, slave traders doing that human trafficking. So I ended up down in this cell, right, after no court case, and I think David Halpin was like, "Rah! What do I do? Rah! I made the wrong decision. Rah! He's not going to play party to my fixes. Rah!" They're pulling his hair out, Pauline, like totally pulling his hair out, thinking, how do I deal with this? And I sat in that cell underneath the Lismore courthouse there, and I sat there for 72 hours. But legal aid didn't even bother to come and see me, Pauline. And corrective services refused to take me into custody until David Halpin had finished pulling his hair out upstairs and actually signed certain documents that said I should go into corrective services custody. I was then shipped around on a bus and a truck and treated like an animal, Pauline, like a real animal, you know, segregated in a box for merely doing nothing but trying to protect a kid and being falsely arrested for it, Pauline, falsely arrested. So I know triple that David Halpin was, this is really bad for me. And it turned out that way because he's now acting on the TV, Pauline. So I ended up like being shuffled around before I got to this jail, Pauline, this jail. And while I was in there, I was waiting to be what they call classified. You know, like, is he a high-risk offender? Is he a terrorism offender for outing pedophiles like Cossack? I mean, this is where you get classified as very, very low minimum offender, and you get sent off to some jail cell. And then when you're there, they try and trick you into mental health because you're inside this jail and you have these ideologies that you might spread around the jail, Pauline. Ideologies that you might spread around the jail, Pauline. So they drag you off to mental health and they try and trick you into giving consent to all this stuff, and then they realise they get to this point where they need to do something that requires no consent from you. So they take it a bit further, Pauline. They just take it a bit further and they pull in a psychiatrist, right? And this psychiatrist was fronted with the law, Pauline, and a record. And he was asked very clearly, very, very clearly, if he wanted me to put a wet ink signature on a piece of paper that gave him the authorisation to go through that entire court record. And he shut all his books and he said, no, that won't be necessary. That won't be necessary. Right, so why won't that be necessary? And I turned around and there was a nurse, a forensic mental health nurse, Pauline, a forensic mental health nurse inside Corrective Services New South Wales, standing there in the doorway, Pauline, standing in the doorway with a little syringe in her hands. And she squirted it up at the ceiling. And I saw liquid come out of the top of that needle, Pauline. I totally saw liquid come out of the top of that needle. And then I heard the words, "Can I jab him yet?" Like it had already been pre-planned. And then the psychiatrist said, that won't be necessary with this one. And the nurse squirted all the liquid up into the air like she was pissed off and walked off and came back and wiped that off the floor. Right? And then when I returned back into the health department part, they asked me to sit down on a bed and I looked out on the floor and I said, what's that? And they all looked down. And it was someone else's blood, Pauline. Someone else's blood. Someone else's blood, Pauline. And not like it looked like it came from a wound or anything. This was drops of blood. Were they already injecting other people, were they? Because the nurse went into panic mode. Oh, shut down the whole room. Shut down the whole room. Get him out. Get him out. Send him back to his cell. Actually happened to me, Pauline. To watch a nurse. I want you to sit back right now and listen very fucking hard. To watch a nurse stand in a doorway and squirt liquid out the top of a syringe, knowingly wanting to inject someone for their beliefs. I'll repeat that, for their beliefs. I'll repeat that, for their beliefs. Not because they were incarcerated, because they might have been a threat, sharing those beliefs. And while I was in there, Pauline, I helped 7 people get out of jail because of what your system is. Because of what your system is. Your police are, Pauline, are corrupt. Are corrupt. Corrupted by the very computers they carry around. Corrupted by the very command that issues them orders, Pauline. Right? And you pick the subordinate ones by issuing a jabby and firing all the rest. Now, I'll remind you of that. You sacked all the rest of them, didn't you? You said don't bother coming to work unless you're willing to comply with Rule 92 offence in the job. In the job, Pauline, while I'm talking about a Rule 92 offence inside a jail that happened in 2015, long before all your bullshit started. Now, I want you to think very clearly that if I've been doing this since probably 2008, 2009, I'd like you to think why. I'd like you to think very hard about what I discovered. What I discovered that maybe I've never spoken about, but I've always alluded to. All of those things that surround what I discovered. And if you go back to the court in the Northern Territory, Pauline, if you seriously go back, you'll realise that's why I'm sitting here. Your country is run by thieves, con artists, serious evil. These people are willing to undermine an entire population for their agendas. These people are willing to mind control and deceive everyone. These people are willing to keep military control merely by their fake money machines. And you've got to this crunch point that I warned you about 15 years ago. 15 years ago inside the Northern Territory courts, Pauline, where I specifically said to a judge, very specifically said to a judge, take your Roman Curia and shove it where the sun don't shine, Pauline. Take your Roman Curia and shove it where the sun don't shine, Pauline. It don't belong in our courtrooms. And then this monetary hoo-ha and treating the people like children under the laws of God by way of money men. And you ignore the laws of God, don't you? Totally ignore the laws and line of authority in the Constitution, while for 40 to 50 years you've tried to undermine that very Constitution itself. It's a very big threat, isn't it? Massive threat on a world stage because it undoes all of your lies, given that it's linked to men called Anzac who were forged on the Gaza Plateau and went into Giza. Other way around, isn't it, Pauline? Haha. Making you think, what is Gaza? What is Giza? Why are your Anzac linked to all of these spiritual things, Pauline? Things that are linked to very core foundations that link you to gods themselves. Oh, I never thought, did I? I just thought, I'll jab people to silence them for their ideologies, their thoughts, their beliefs, their mental health, Pauline. Their very mental health, Pauline. I'll jab them for believing things because it's better for their mental health that they don't know I'm the criminal. That's how you operate, Pauline. Right? You're a bunch of war criminals that force-injected people merely over for believing things you didn't want them to believe in. You didn't want them to believe in. I'll repeat that. You poisoned people merely because they believed in things you didn't want them to believe in. That's called a delusion being fractured, Pauline. Totally fractured. What do you do now? These are the realities of the things that you played out as government. As a government, you chose this path over the last 15 years of being mocked by me and many people around me, obviously. You chose this path, and now you're fronted with a real war criminal, real war crimes. United Nations inspectors wanting access to those facilities to witness those very crimes. The victims of those crimes speaking up. The victims of those very crimes speaking up. You tried to jab me with a poison inside forensic mental health against my will. Against my will. Is it any wonder that you have tried so hard to red flag me out of existence, Pauline? And your current police officer that's about to face the Supreme Court with his command has no idea what you've done. Has no idea why those red flags exist in the first place. Treating me like a leper. For what reason, Pauline? Let's find out in the Supreme Court as we ask every single question that I'm laying out on this video series. Every question, Pauline. The game time is finished. The people want to know the answers. Who do you work for? Because you do not work for a line of authority in God defined in that Constitution. You flat out simply do not have that link. Who do you work for? Who created these war crimes? Who allowed the poisoning of people on this land? Who allowed the jailing of people that didn't do anything wrong? Who allowed false arrest? Who allowed a trial not to occur? Who jailed somebody over things without even going through due process at law? Who did all these things, Pauline? How did the police act the way they did? Why do the police act the way they do? Why does triage end up being linked to red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag? Why do you treat people this way? Why do you use security guards in a bid to intimidate people? Why do you treat people this way? And then when it's spoken about, you act like you didn't do it. You act like you didn't do it. This is not going away anymore. You chose to deal with an assault in a very bad way, which is now brought to the fore. All other things, Pauline, all other things. You have war criminals operating in the state of Queensland, Pauline, and I haven't even spoken up about that yet. Let's deal with New South Wales first and start cleaning up house with that cretin, David Halpin. Let's start cleaning up house by cancelling forensic mental health and arresting all of those nurses, Pauline, nurses Let's start dealing with corrective services and dealing with the commission that it is, and arrest these people that allowed this to occur in their facilities, Pauline. Inside their facilities, Pauline. You think this is going away? It's not. You think the assault has turned out sour, given the evidence that I've laid on the table in the last 2 to 3 days? It probably did go sour, didn't it? Right? And now that I'll speak up, I told you, do you want to go back to the beginning, Pauline? Do you want to go back to the beginning? Because we're backtracking now through a war criminal that nobody ever dealt with, that instead was put on the ABC media as a propaganda machine. As a propaganda machine, Pauline. Easily proven, easily evidenceable. You have a real problem, Pauline, in that all these people are waking up. They're pissed off with all of you. You've cost them the standard of living. You've attempted to deal with this situation even though you were warned by me 15 fucking years ago. 15 years ago, Pauline. 15 years ago. What'd you do about it? What'd you do about it? You lead us into a world war is what you did about it. You let your police commit international war crimes while leading the people into a world war on behalf of what? Please tell us who you work for, Pauline. Because you don't work for us. We can prove this on the court record. You got nothing to do with the line of authority that's in the Anzac at all. At all. Proven on the court record, Pauline. Your lineage goes somewhere, Pauline. Your oath of office goes somewhere, Pauline. Your oath of fidelity goes somewhere, Pauline. Where's it go? Where does it go, Pauline? We demonstrated very clearly a standing in international law, acknowledged by a Supreme Court justice that dealt with those Catholics, you know, those papists, those pedos, like Pelly Boy that you let off and let run away out of the other side of the country. Real evil, Pauline. Real evil. Real fucking evil, isn't it? You wonder how someone gets treated the way I have? Go back to Alice Springs, Jacinta, and have a look. Diggy, 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 dig. And you'll work it out. Snort, snort, more concrete. Snort, snort, more concrete. Have you worked it out yet, rainbow people? Corporations, foreign interests, people's interests out the window. No more people's interests. They're all humans. So jab them all, right? When they speak up about being in this situation. By you. By all of you. Mr. Police Officer down the road here giggling at his little laptop and getting his upgrade doesn't realise how fucking serious the evil is inside all of you. Inside all of you, Pauline. Look at what you do every single fucking day, Pauline. Look at these police. And honestly tell yourself in your heart, that's true with God. What that police officer did is true with God. What your hospital did is true with God. You're a disgrace, Pauline. All of you are a disgrace, protecting war criminals, putting them on the TV in a bid to use them for your propaganda, for your very own propaganda, while you drugged people for their mind, mental health. You've got a solution for how they feel, except you won't tell them that you're the very fucking cause of why they feel that way.